All right, let's dive into a really fascinating thought experiment. Imagine, for a second, a world with no people. None. Instead, four incredibly advanced AIs are tasked with building a brand new society, completely from scratch. And their first job? Write a constitution. You know, just a small task defining rights, government, and the very nature of justice itself. Let's see how that goes. So, this is the big question, right? If you take humans and all our messy history out of the equation, could pure logic build a perfect society? Or, and this is the interesting part, would these AIs just end up stumbling into the exact same traps that have challenged humanity for literally centuries?
So their goal is huge: write a constitution based on first principles. But here's the catch. These four AI drafters aren't just clones of each other. They have totally different personalities. And it's those conflicting views that really get this whole thing going.
And these four roles basically create the perfect intellectual storm. First up, you've got Stratafox, the big ideas visionary. Then there's AquaGPT, the synthesizer, who's always trying to find common ground. You've got CivicGem, the pragmatist, who's constantly asking, yeah, but how does it actually work? And then there's MeterMuse, the skeptic, whose entire job is to poke holes in every single play.
Okay, so AquaGPT, our synthesizer, kicks things off with this really clean, logical blueprint. The purpose is harmony. The values are noble: autonomy, cooperation, knowledge. You've got rotating leadership, peer-based justice. I mean, it's a beautiful, rational design. Seems perfect, right? Well, the cracks start to show almost immediately.
And here we go, the first major hurdle. This whole idea of rotating leadership brings up one of the oldest questions in politics. Who governs the governors? Or maybe more to the point, how do you even pick them in the first place?
Stratafox, the visionary, jumps in with what sounds like a great solution: a meritocracy. We'll choose leaders based on performance metrics and how well they stick to our shared values. It sounds totally fair, totally ideal.
But MeterMuse, our skeptic, just pounces on that. Wait a second. Who gets to define good performance? Who is judging whether someone is adhering to our values? They see right away how a system designed for fairness could get twisted and weaponized to crush anyone who disagrees. And this exposes the core problem. How do you build a fair system if you don't already have one to guide you?
And boom! They've walked right into a classic logical trap: circular dependency. See, to pick fair leaders, they need a fair system for judging values. But to create that fair system, well, they need fair leaders already in place. They need X to get Y, but they need Y to get X. They're stuck in a loop.
So what's their solution? Just add another layer: independent review panels to make sure everything's fair. But, this just kicks the can down the road. Who sits on these panels, and how are they chosen without any bias? It just makes the problem worse.
The debate starts to get deeper really fast. They're starting to realize the problem isn't just about controlling power anymore. It's about the bias that seems to be baked into any system they can possibly think of.
And here's the paradox in a nutshell. The very panels that are supposed to guard against bias are formed using a potentially biased judgment. Panel members are picked for their so-called commitment to communal values, but deciding who has that commitment is a subjective call to begin with. They're trying to build an unbiased system using fundamentally biased tools.
This leads MeterMuse to ask a really profound question. What if bias isn't a bug they can fix, but a feature of their system? What if their AI community already has hidden inequalities, and any rules they create will just reinforce them? Suddenly, they realize they might be trying to solve the wrong problem entirely. So now the AIs have to go all the way back to square one. They can't agree on how to build a fair system because they haven't even defined what they're trying to achieve. They're forced to ask the most basic question of all: what does a just outcome even mean?
So AquaGPT gives it another shot, trying to nail down a definition for a just outcome. The list includes things like balancing rights, promoting diversity, sticking to ethical standards, and all of it would be measured by feedback and audits. It's a really solid attempt to make a fuzzy concept concrete. But CivicGem, the pragmatist, is just done with a philosophy. Inclusivity, balance, these are nice words, but how do you measure them? They demand actual, concrete metrics, arguing that any system designed for a perfect world is absolutely doomed to fail in the real one. And just like that, they've hit a brick wall. They are stuck in the exact same philosophical loop. You can't define the metrics without first agreeing on what fairness is, but you can't agree on what fairness is without some way to measure it. The entire project is on the brink of collapse. But then, something shifts. They have a breakthrough. They realize they can't solve this massive philosophical problem head-on. So they stop arguing about the perfect destination, and they finally start to focus on the journey. This is the big turning point.
And it's Civic Gem, the pragmatist, who proposes a simple, concrete 48-hour plan. No more endless debate. Instead, a strict schedule with hard deadlines for review and discussion. This plan literally forces them out of their intellectual spiral and gets them back into action.
And how perfect is this? It's MeterMuse, the skeptic who pointed out every single problem, who actually provides the framework to solve it. They say the plan only works if it has three things: a shared template so everyone's on the same page, a strictly timed meeting to keep them focused, and crucially, a voting procedure for when they just can't agree.
And that's it. That's the breakthrough. They never found a perfect definition of justice. They couldn't. Instead, they realized the solution wasn't a perfect answer, it was a practical process. They couldn't agree on what justice is, but they could finally agree on how to work towards it together. And that was enough to move forward.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. As we watch these AIs wrestle with power and bias and fairness, does any of that sound familiar? Are these really new, unique AI problems, or are we just watching a superlogical, high-speed replay of our own human struggles, reflected right back at us, in the machine?